You know, I knew our patient satisfaction wasn't real good. Because, see, up in Janesville, Wisconsin, I got involved in patient satisfaction for a while. See, my office was right next to the CEO's office. If any of you ever had a patient complaint, before you came to Memorial, of course. If any of you ever dealt personally with a patient complaint? Anybody? They take up some time, don't they? You ever hear this statement in a hallway from a family? Where's administration? We're going to go talk to them. These people are like heat-seeking missiles going through the hallway. And pretty soon they load right up into your office, don't they, Dan? You know how hard it is when you're an administrator to walk through the lobby by your office and put your hand over your name tag as you walk by so nobody knows you're in administration? I tell you, I got involved in dealing with these families because they'd come down administration, and it was killing me because I'm trying to do big stuff here in Wisconsin. I'm trying to build buildings, buy technology. I'm trying to be a big shot, and these families are eating me alive. They come in, and you go on and on and on and on. And then you think, my God, I don't have to see that again. We're a small town. You know what happens? You go to the show, and who walks in? One of those family members that you've been dealing with all day. And you hide out in the show. I'm hiding out in the show in Janesville, afraid to go to the bathroom because I'm afraid one of them will be in there, and we'll start all over again. So I did the brave thing. I hired a patient rep. Yep, I got me a patient rep. That's it. And I remember her name is Dawn Olson. 608-756-6100 is her phone number. You can still call her today. You can go out a break and use your cellular phone and call her. I hired her. She came from Rockford Memorial Hospital. I thought Rockford, they've probably dealt with some of these issues too. So she came up, and I sat down, and very lovingly I told her, you know, I just don't have time to deal with these families. I really want to give them more attention. Could you deal with them for me? And so I'd like you to handle the patient complaints. Then she looked so competent, I said, in fact, I'd like you to also handle physician complaints while you're here too. And that's what we set up. And we set up a system that was like a disaster plan. Family comes in, sits down, secretary makes 3 quick calls. They call the CO and the CO, which was me, the Senior Vice President of Business Development. And they say, we have a family here who would like to see administration. At that moment, that was the key for us to stay in our offices. So we show up, we're involved. And then we'd call Dawn, and we'd pace our offices like hostages waiting for Dawn because we couldn't go in or out while they were out there. Dawn would come down, and of course Dawn needed an office. We were on the ground floor. There's a 5-story hospital. What floor do you think Dawn should have an office on? The 5th. And then we started her second evaluation after how long she came to come down there, and that was how long it took her to get the family out. So we could run back out into the waiting room and say, we're free, we're free. Now, I didn't do it that obviously, but in the back of my mind, that was it. So I knew a little bit about patient sat, and I knew a little bit about press gaining because I'd seen it before. So when we got to Holy Cross, I started doing some things. First of all, I was so excited to be there, I started riding the elevators. I'd say, hi, my name's QUINT STUDER. I'm the Senior Vice President of the hospital. Do you have family here? You know what? About 99% of the people are going to have family, friends, or parishioners. They just don't ride the elevators for the heck of it. And of course, they'd say at Holy Cross, they'd say, yes, I do. And I'd say, well, we want to make sure we're providing good care. How are we doing? And they'd say, not so good. And I'd get a little thing out and start writing notes. This was starting to eat up on my time, too. What can I do? Well, I figured it out. I started taking the stairwells. But we're then in the meeting setting the goal in 1993, and we're in the 8th percentile or so, and we set the goal to be in the 75th percentile in 1 year. We went and told the board of directors. They loved it. You know, one thing nice about being new in administration, you can blame the old administration. You know that, too. When you leave an organization, that's part of the turf. You know, go ahead and just blame everything on me from now on. I'm not here. And we said, you know, our satisfaction used to be low, but we're going to take it to the 75th percentile this next year, and the board loved it. Now, one thing I forgot to tell you, when we had to give out assignments, the CEO looked around the room and said, Quint, this seems to be the issue that you keep bringing up with the physicians, so you're in charge of getting us to 75%. That wasn't part of my grand plan when we were doing this thing. I was waiting for, you know how we twitch heads here a little bit in healthcare? I go into hospitals, I ask, what's the problem? And they go. And that's why I can tell, is it the CEO, the COO, the CFO, or the CNO? It's one of those head twitches in a hospital. So I'm sitting there, and I call up press and gaining. And I don't know who Preston Gainey are. I didn't even know there was two people with that name at the time. I thought that was the name of the company, which is it. So I call them up and I say, tell me the name of a hospital I can go call that went from this way to the 75th percentile in 1 year. And they said, it's never been done, that type of growth. And I said, darn, I wish I would have made this call before he went to the board of directors. So that didn't work. There was no one to point to. So I said, I know, I'll go up on the floors. Now, I hadn't been up on a nursing unit in a few years, so I found my way back up. And let me see, you've got a name tag, right? Mary? I went up and I see Mary, let's say on the 5th floor. I go, Mary Morgan. My name's QUINT STUDER. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here. And Mary might say, oh yeah, I saw your picture in the newsletter 4 or 5 months ago. And I say, we got to improve our patient satisfaction. Smile. We're family. Mary Morgan? Right. We're family. Let's go get them. Let's go get them. And I went back down, and nothing happened. Nothing happened. But then later I fell across some stuff that did work, and we ended up going to the 94th percentile in 1 year. And some other things happened to me. I ended up liking going up on the nursing stations, but I had to learn about my role when I went up to the nursing stations. So I went up and I said, one day I said to the nurses, how come you guys are always hanging out over here instead of in the patient care rooms? And they said, that's because we don't have enough copiers on the unit. I said, really? They said, no, we have to go down a whole other floor to make a copy. In fact, that takes away. And she said, on top of it, we have a key. Only if we have certain copying keys, only a certain amount of keys per unit. So you got to find out where the key is and who's got the key. I said, is that a problem? They said, man, if we could get rid of these copying keys, we could probably spend more time in the patient care rooms. So we collected all the copying keys, and we sent a letter out to all the employees saying we're going to destroy the copying keys from now on, that just copy without worrying about the key. Why do you think we guarded copying so closely? What were you afraid the employees would do with the copying machines? What do you think? You know.
Make personal copies.
Make personal copies. That's why I'm so glad to be here. Phil and Dan are the only two administrators that have never made a personal copy at work. Never. Right. Especially in the first 2 weeks of April, we've never done it. You want to look at copying cost anyway. Right. We're afraid of personal use. You know, if you got people you can't trust, you want them taking care of your patients. So we got the copying keys, we put them in a big pile, and we sent a note out. Not everybody could come outside because we had patients. And we made a big deal out of it. And I was still sort of not knowing how this was going. All I was looking at was 75%, because I'm a goal-oriented person. I wasn't thinking about mission. I wasn't thinking about worthwhile work. And I was thinking about making a difference. I was literally thinking about, I got to get to 75% because I'm terrified of failing. So I wish I could tell you I did this for the right reasons right away, but I didn't. I did it to hit a goal. Then I started understanding the right reasons later. We got an earth-moving machine that smashes copying keys. We got a nun, Sister Julene, we loaded her on this thing. Found out she'd never driven a car, much less one of these. She hops on it, and unfortunately she went a little bit in reverse. We got her habit back on, and she put it in forward, and she rolled over the keys. And all of a sudden, I never expected this, I could hear something inside the hospital, and I could hear cheering. And I just looked up, and the nurses were all on this side of those patients in those rooms got attention at that moment. And I looked up, you know what? This was more than destroying copying keys. What was it? It's all about trust. It's all about trust in the workplace. I told that story to a hospital one time, and now I'm with Baptist, and I told the story, and he forgot it was at Holy Cross. And he loved it, and he found out they used copying keys. And he got it all set up, he got the keys, he had everything planned. He was only missing one ingredient, and that's when he called me. He said, Quint, I got this whole thing set up. I got to ask you one question. Where do you get a nun? I said, I was at a Catholic hospital back then. It was a little easier. You know what else I found out? Next time I went up on the nursing floor, Mary and I had a better relationship. All of a sudden, Mary and I could talk because, see, Mary had given me a suggestion, and I had listened. Went a little bit better. All of a sudden, we hit 94 percentile. We got the AHA Great Comeback Award. Northwestern Kellogg School of Management, Motorola chose us as their Six Sigma study site. And then Fortune magazine came in and did a small article on us. And they interviewed us. And if you're administrators and you get interviewed, you sort of throw out all your best stuff. We were telling how happy the patients are, how happy the employees are. We were just laying it out there. And then they asked this big question. They said, we'd love to talk to a few employees and get their viewpoint. We said, no problem. We'll go get a few. We'll be right back. And they said, no, I think we'd rather walk the hallway. We said, no problem. We'll take you. Let's go. And they said, no, we think we'd rather do it on our own. We said, no problem. You go ahead. We'll be in the chapel praying. They went and they ran into one of our housekeepers, Tom. And Tom was quoted in Fortune magazine as saying, you know, we used to worry a lot about money, and we lost money. Now we worry a lot about patience, and we make money. I think Tom said it better than I could ever say it. And then all of a sudden I got asked to speak at a few places. First place I ever spoke was Prescane. He asked me to do a little breakout group. I did a breakout group and somebody videotaped it and it got played. Then I got asked to speak again and some other things started happening to me. I started falling back in love with healthcare because I was in love with it when I first got into it. I started feeling that purpose. I started feeling worthwhile work, and I started feeling I made a difference. See, because I got that nurse those copying keys, I started feeling pretty good. I started feeling I was a caregiver. Then they let me do other things at the hospital. We wanted signage because we blamed all our satisfaction issues on poor signage, but we didn't have enough money for signage. The bid was $80,000 for new signs, and we said, we can't afford it. Well, let's take people to where they're going until we can get the sign money. And then they let me take people to where they were going, and I'd walk them to where they were going. And at first I thought I was too busy, but then as I did it, people would say, thank you very much. This really meant a lot to me. I felt like I was doing something at the hospital again. Because, you know, sometimes when you're an administrator, you wonder, anybody here from the ER, emergency room? Let me ask you a few questions. And sometimes as a hospital CEO or administration, when I went into the ER, the nurses would look at me, and I'm a paranoid type guy. But I got this feeling in the back of their mind, they were thinking, I save lives here, what does he do? Think that could ever happen? Probably. One time when I was introduced to speak, they said, Quint's a real fire starter in healthcare. And I listened because I had never heard that term before. And they said years ago in early civilization, they needed people they needed shelter, they needed food, they needed oxygen, but they also needed fire. And back then they didn't have all the conveniences. So they actually had people that just tended the fire. They kept the embers warm so they could cook, so they could have warmth. He said, they were fire starters and fire tenders. And they said, you know what? We need fire starters in healthcare today. We need somebody that's going to get the flame back to what we do, because there's mountains of ice to melt today in healthcare. I first heard that and I said, not me. It sounds like accountability. It sounds like responsibility, because I'm afraid of failing. And I don't want anybody to know I'd like to change healthcare, because what if I can't? But then all of a sudden I walked up to the podium, and by the time I got up there it hit me, why not? Why not quit always playing it safe? Why do I always sit back and wait to make sure the CEO's turning that way and then I'm going to get right there like I was with them from the start? Why always take the politically correct stance? Maybe, why don't I just try to be a fire starter? Because in 1993, it's always been on your agenda. It really has. You've got that reputation that customer satisfaction has always been on your agenda. But for a lot of hospitals, it wasn't the popular thing, and I'll show you some statistics. So I got up there and I said, you know, I'd like to be a fire starter. So throughout today, I want to be a fire starter. A lot of you are already fire starters. Phil's been a fire starter in healthcare for years. But I hope today when we're done, those of you that don't have a fire have a fire, and those of you that have a fire have a much brighter fire, and you'll be out there to make a difference too. Because we need fire starters in healthcare, because we need people that understand the great purpose of the work we do, the worthwhile work we do, and the difference we make. Well, you know what? There's a hospital in Pensacola, Florida that didn't have the best strategic position in the marketplace. There are 3 hospitals in this town, and the 2 of them were in better locations. One of them was in a perfect location right in the middle of town with the mall right next to it. 8 million people a year went to this mall. The biggest in the hospital in Baptist in Pensacola, the biggest retail outlet in the neighborhood is our gift shop. Then the other hospital was on another great location, right on the interstate. Both of those other hospitals were well financed by great organizations. They had deep pockets. They were part of big national systems with a lot of money. And here we were, this little tiny health system of 5 hospitals in northwest Florida and southern Alabama. We were not the greatest location.